before the Bible described Adam, before the Greeks told stories of Zeus and Olympus, and before ancient Egypt raised temples to its gods. The people of Mesopotamia recorded stories about powerful beings who shaped the world, established kingship, controlled human destiny, and participated in the creation of mankind. They were known as the Anunnaki. To historians, they were members of an ancient pantheon, divine figures belonging to the religious traditions of Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Babylon. But modern ancient alien theorists believe those stories may have been misunderstood. They argue that the Anunnaki were not supernatural gods. They were visitors, advanced beings from another world who arrived on Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago in search of a resource capable of saving their home planet: gold. According to the theory, they came long before modern civilization. They established settlements, they extracted resources, and when the physical burden of their mission became too great, they created a new species to perform the labor for them: humanity. At the center of that creation was a being remembered as Enki, a figure associated in Mesopotamian tradition with wisdom, water, craftsmanship, magic, and the creation of human life. And when another faction later decided humanity had become too numerous, too disruptive, and too dangerous to preserve, Enki allegedly defied them. He warned one man that a catastrophic flood was coming, a man remembered under different names in different traditions: Zeusudra, Atrahasis, Utnapishtim, and centuries later, Noah. Are these simply different versions of an ancient myth? Or could the oldest written stories on Earth preserve distorted memories of humanity's true beginning? Did beings from another world come here in search of gold? Did Enki help engineer the human species? Were the gods worshipped by ancient civilizations actually advanced visitors? And if they created us, where did they go? The modern Anunnaki theory does not begin on Earth. It begins with a distant world known as Nibiru. According to the interpretation popularized by author Zecharia Sitchin, Nibiru traveled along an enormous orbit that brought it through the inner solar system approximately once every 3,600 years. Its inhabitants were described as an advanced humanoid civilization, but their world was facing a crisis. The theory claims Nibiru's atmosphere had begun to deteriorate. Without intervention, the planet could eventually become unable to support life. Its inhabitants allegedly discovered that finely dispersed particles of gold could be introduced into the atmosphere, helping reflect radiation and stabilize the planet's damaged environment. But Nibiru did not possess enough easily accessible gold to complete the task, so its people looked elsewhere. And eventually, according to the theory, they discovered a young planet rich in water, minerals, plant life, and precious metals: Earth. This account of Nibiru's failing atmosphere, the need for gold, and an extraterrestrial mission to Earth does not appear as one continuous story in any widely accepted translation of a Sumerian tablet. It is a modern reconstruction, a theory created by combining ancient myths, celestial language, creation stories, and later interpretations into a single narrative. But that narrative has captivated millions because it offers a radically different explanation for humanity's origin. According to Sitchin's chronology, the first visitors arrived on Earth almost 500,000 years ago. If that timeline were correct, the world they encountered would have been almost unrecognizable to us. There were no cities, no farms, no roads, no written language, no kingdoms, and no modern human civilization. Earth was a wilderness of vast forests, open grasslands, wetlands, deserts, glaciers, and shifting coastlines. Different human ancestors already existed. Early members of the genus Homo hunted, scavenged, made stone tools, controlled fire in some regions, and moved through environments populated by animals that no longer exist. Mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed predators, massive herds crossing landscapes untouched by organized society. From the perspective of the theory, Earth was not empty, but it was undeveloped, rich in resources, and waiting. The first mission was allegedly commanded by a being named Ea, later known as Enki. In Mesopotamian tradition, Enki was connected with subterranean freshwater, wisdom, intelligence, magic, creation, and skilled craftsmanship. In the ancient alien interpretation, those divine qualities become something more technological. Wisdom becomes advanced scientific knowledge. Creation becomes biological engineering. Magic becomes technology misunderstood by the people who witnessed it, and the heavenly realm becomes another world. Enki and the first expedition allegedly landed near the Persian Gulf, in the region that would later become southern Mesopotamia. There, according to the theory, they established their earliest settlement, Eridu. To archaeology, Eridu was one of the earliest known cities in southern Mesopotamia and an important center of Enki's worship. To ancient alien theorists, that connection is not accidental. They see Eridu not merely as a city built in honor of Enki, but as the memory of his first command center on Earth, a place where the visitors established themselves long before humanity understood who or what they were. The first expedition was only the beginning. According to the theory, more visitors arrived from Nibiru. They established additional settlements, transportation centers, processing facilities, mining operations, and a hierarchy of command. At the top was Anu, associated in ancient tradition with the highest heaven and regarded as the father or supreme authority of the gods. Below him were his sons, Enlil and Enki. Enlil was connected with wind, atmosphere, authority, kingship, and command. Enki was connected with water, wisdom, creation, and technical knowledge. Their relationship would become one of the central tensions in the modern Anunnaki narrative. Enlil represented structure, control, hierarchy, and obedience to the mission. Enki was more flexible, more curious, and, in many later interpretations, more sympathetic toward the creatures living on Earth. According to the ancient alien version of events, Enlil assumed command of operations on the planet, while Enki oversaw the extraction of gold, especially in southern Africa. For generations, the labor was allegedly carried out by lower-ranking members of the expedition. The theory often identifies these workers as the Igigi. Ancient texts do describe junior gods carrying out exhausting labor before humanity existed. In the Babylonian Atrahasis tradition, the younger gods dig canals, maintain waterways, and carry the physical burden imposed upon them by higher-ranking deities. They work for years, then generations. The labor is relentless. The suffering grows, and eventually, they refuse. In the middle of the night, the workers surround the dwelling of Enlil. Their tools are burned, their labor is rejected. The mission has reached a breaking point. They will no longer continue. To historians, this may reflect ancient concerns about labor, hierarchy, rebellion, and the organization of society. To ancient alien theorists, it is something far more literal, a labor revolt, not among supernatural beings, but among an extraterrestrial workforce assigned to a brutal resource extraction mission. Whether the story is symbolic or historical, the problem at its center is clear. The work still had to be done. The canals still had to be dug. The land still had to be maintained. And in the ancient alien version, the gold still had to be removed from the earth. A replacement workforce was needed. The assembly of the gods searched for a solution. Punishing every worker would not solve the larger problem. The mission would still fail. The resources would still remain underground, and the physical burden would still exist. Enki proposed something radical. Instead of forcing the existing workers to return, they would create a new being, a creature capable of understanding commands, using tools, performing repetitive labor, and surviving in Earth's environment. In the ancient Atrahasis tradition, humanity is created specifically to relieve the gods of exhausting work. Enki conceives the solution. A mother goddess called Nintu, Belet Ili, or associated with Ninhursag in related traditions, performs the physical creation. Clay is combined with the flesh and blood of a sacrificed god. The mixture also receives divine intelligence. From it, human beings are formed, 7 males and 7 females. The new species is placed on Earth to carry the burden once assigned to the gods. To an ancient Mesopotamian audience, clay was a natural symbol of human existence. It came from the ground. It could be shaped, it could be given form, and after death, the human body returned to the earth from which it came. Blood represented life. The sacrificed god supplied a divine component. Humanity was therefore both earthly and something more, made from clay, but carrying the essence of the gods. Ancient alien theorists interpret this description differently. They argue that clay may represent biological material already present on Earth, an existing hominin, a creature physically capable of work but lacking the intelligence, language, or awareness required by the Anunnaki. The blood and flesh of the god, in this interpretation, represent genetic material. DNA. The divine intelligence becomes the biological upgrade that transformed an existing Earth species into something new, what ancient people described as creation from clay. The theory reframes as genetic engineering, not creation from nothing. Modification, a combining of two forms of life, one native to Earth, the other from somewhere else. And if that interpretation is correct, humanity was not created as the final purpose of the mission. We were created as a solution to a labor problem, a species designed to work. The phrase, Enki created humanity, simplifies a story that changes across different Mesopotamian traditions. Enki is often the architect of the plan, the intelligence behind the solution, but the mother goddess performs the physical act of creation. In some stories, she is Nama, in others, Ninma, Ninhursag, Nintu, or Belet Ili. The names and details shift, but the basic pattern remains. The gods are burdened by work. Enki develops a solution. A mother goddess forms humanity, and human beings inherit the labor. In the Sumerian work, often called Enki and Ninma, the minor gods complain about digging canals and carrying the workload. Enki's mother brings their suffering to him. A plan is developed to form humans from clay so they can assume the god's burden. The modern theory adds another layer. It claims the first attempts did not succeed. Some beings were physically unstable. Some were unable to reproduce. Some possessed strength but lacked intelligence. Others may have been intelligent but malformed. Ancient stories describe imperfect beings created during contests or experiments involving divine power. Mainstream interpretation understands these accounts as myths about creation, disability, fate, social roles, and the limits of divine control. Ancient alien theorists see something else: prototype after prototype, trial and error, an advanced species attempting to stabilize a hybrid organism. According to this interpretation, the first successful humans may not have been capable of reproduction. They could perform labor. They could understand commands, but they could not create more workers on their own. That meant each human had to be produced through continued intervention. Eventually, the theory claims, Enki and the mother goddess made another modification. Human beings became fertile. They could reproduce without Anunnaki assistance. And once that change occurred, the human population began to grow. The theory connects this transformation to later stories of humanity acquiring forbidden knowledge. Before gaining awareness, the first humans are innocent, unquestioning, unashamed. Afterward, they recognize themselves. They understand sexuality. They gain judgment. They become capable of disobedience. Traditional religion interprets such stories as humanity's fall from innocence. Ancient alien theorists reinterpret them as memories of biological and intellectual awakening. The serpent becomes associated with Enki, not as a force of evil, but as a giver of knowledge the ruling authority wanted withheld. Enki was connected with wisdom and sometimes linked with serpentine symbolism, but the direct identification of Enki with the biblical serpent is a modern interpretation rather than an explicit statement in the Mesopotamian texts. From the ancient alien perspective, Enki did more than create a workforce. He made humans aware. He gave them something their designers may not have intended them to possess: choice, curiosity, sexual independence, and the ability to become more than servants. But that interpretation creates a deeper question. Why would Enki help humanity? Was he compassionate? Was he rebelling against Enlil? Did he view the species as his creation and therefore his responsibility? Or was humanity part of a larger struggle for power within the Anunnaki themselves? The ancient stories do not present Enki as a simple hero. He is clever, powerful, protective, but also unpredictable. He participates in the divine system that creates humans for labor. He does not free humanity from that system. Yet when other gods attempt to reduce or destroy the human population, Enki repeatedly intervenes. That tension makes him one of the most fascinating figures in the entire tradition. Creator, master, teacher, and protector. The new species succeeded. Humans dug canals, raised crops, maintained temples, built settlements, produced food, and supplied offerings to the gods. From the perspective of the ancient stories, humanity had taken its place within the divine order. The gods were freed from physical labor. Humans maintained the world. But the solution created another problem. Humanity multiplied. In the Atrahasis tradition, the population expands rapidly. The people become so numerous and so loud that Enlil can no longer rest. He sends disease. Enki secretly shows humanity how to survive it. Enlil sends drought. Again, Enki provides a solution. Then, famine. And once more, Enki intervenes. Each attempt to reduce the human population fails because the being who helped conceive humanity refuses to let it disappear. To modern ears, destroying humanity because it was too noisy can sound almost absurd, but ancient stories often compress larger ideas into human language. Noise may represent overpopulation, conflict, disorder, rebellion, cities expanding beyond control, or the disruption of a cosmic balance the gods were expected to maintain. Ancient alien theorists take the conflict more literally. Human beings had become too numerous, too intelligent, too independent. The worker species was no longer behaving like a workforce. It was becoming a civilization. Humans developed agriculture, engineering, astronomy, writing, government, law, and organized religion. Mainstream archaeology explains these developments through gradual human innovation, environmental pressures, trade, population growth, and social organization. Ancient alien theorists point to the rise of complex civilization in Mesopotamia and ask whether humanity received assistance. Did the Anunnaki teach agriculture? Did they introduce mathematics? Did they provide knowledge of astronomy? Did they establish kingship? Did they create priesthoods through which they could govern from a distance? Ancient Mesopotamian traditions frequently describe civilization itself as descending from the gods. Kingship descends from heaven. Divine powers govern crafts, institutions, social roles, and the organization of cities. To historians, these beliefs reflect a society in which religion legitimized political authority and explained the structure of the world. To ancient alien theorists, the language may be more literal. Civilization descended from heaven, because its teachers came from somewhere beyond Earth. Perhaps humanity was created for labor, but once humans could reproduce, learn, organize, and remember, the species became something more, and that may have made some of its creators uncomfortable. Eventually, Enlil abandons limited solutions. Disease has failed, drought has failed, famine has failed, humanity continues to survive. So the gods agree upon a final measure, a flood large enough to erase the human population. The gods swear an oath not to warn mankind. Enki is bound by that oath, but he finds a way around it. He does not speak directly to the man he intends to save. Instead, he addresses a wall, a reed wall, and allows his chosen servant to overhear. The survivor's identity changes depending on the text. In the Sumerian flood tradition, he is Ziusudra. In the Akkadian Atrahasis epic, he is Atrahasis, the exceedingly wise. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, he is Utnapishtim. Centuries later, the Hebrew tradition would tell of Noah. The names differ, the details change, but the central sequence remains strikingly familiar. A divine decision is made to destroy humanity. One god secretly warns a chosen man. The man is instructed to build a vessel. He preserves human and animal life. The flood arrives. Civilization is devastated. And after the waters recede, the survivor offers a sacrifice. In the Mesopotamian accounts, the flood is terrifying. The sky darkens. The winds roar. People can no longer recognize one another in the chaos. Even the gods become horrified by the destruction. The mother goddess mourns the humans she helped create. The other gods suffer because the people who supplied their food and offerings are gone. When the flood ends and the survivor emerges alive, Enlil is furious. He knows someone broke the agreement. He knows Enki is responsible, but Enki argues that complete destruction was unnecessary. A different solution is created. Human life will be limited. People will age, some will be infertile, some pregnancies will fail, disease and misfortune will reduce the population. Human beings will continue, but they will no longer multiply without limits. The Mesopotamian flood stories predate the written biblical account of Noah and share several major elements with it. One possibility is literary influence. The stories traveled between cultures, were adapted, retold, and placed within new religious frameworks. Another possibility is that multiple societies preserve memories of real catastrophic floods. Regional disasters so devastating that survivors believed the entire world had disappeared. Ancient alien theorists propose something more dramatic. In Sitchin's version, the approach of Nibiru disrupted Earth's environment. Its gravitational influence destabilized ice and oceans, triggering a global catastrophe. The Anunnaki allegedly knew the disaster was coming, but they intended to let humanity perish. Enki refused. He protected the species he had helped create, and in doing so, he became the prototype for the divine figure who saves mankind through forbidden knowledge. But another possibility remains. What if the Noah tradition did not begin with one man? What if Noah was the final version of a much older memory? A memory repeated for thousands of years, retold under different names, until its original context was forgotten. And if Enki was the being behind that warning, was he protecting humanity out of compassion, out of guilt, or because we were never merely workers to him? If the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial visitors, their alleged influence appears to fade as recorded history begins. The gods remain present in temples, myths, royal inscriptions, prayers, and rituals, but they no longer seem to walk openly among humanity. So what happened? One possibility is that the mission ended. The gold was obtained, Nibiru's crisis was resolved, and most of the visitors returned home. Another theory suggests the Anunnaki withdrew after the flood, leaving humans to rebuild civilization with limited assistance. Some may have remained temporarily, governing through chosen kings, priests, or bloodlines believed to possess divine ancestry. Ancient rulers frequently claimed divine appointment. Some claimed descent from gods. Kingship itself was said to have descended from heaven. To historians, those claims legitimized political power. They allowed rulers to present authority as sacred and unquestionable. To ancient alien theorists, they may preserve memories of rulers installed by beings who once governed Earth directly. Another possibility is that the Anunnaki never truly left. They may have reduced direct contact, moved into hidden locations, continued observing humanity, or influenced events through institutions and elite families. There is no verified evidence demonstrating that extraterrestrial Anunnaki remained on Earth or continued to intervene in human affairs. But the absence of a clear departure story creates space for speculation. The gods do not board spacecraft and announce that they are leaving. They simply become more distant, more symbolic, more divine. Perhaps they departed physically and survived in religion. Perhaps different civilizations remembered the same visitors under different names. Enki became Ea. In another culture, perhaps a teacher god, a bringer of wisdom, a serpent, a rebel, a protector. Enlil became the distant authority who demanded obedience. Anu became the supreme father in heaven. The identities may have shifted as stories move between languages, regions, and civilizations. Or perhaps these similarities exist because human societies repeatedly created divine figures to explain the same universal experiences: authority, creation, conflict, death, natural disaster, and the question of why we exist. But ancient alien theory asks us to consider another possibility. Perhaps the gods did not disappear. Perhaps only the way humanity described them changed. If advanced visitors once interacted openly with early humans, later generations may have preserved those encounters through ritual and mythology. Technology could become magic. Commanders could become gods. Vehicles could become heavenly chariots. And genetic intervention could become creation. The longer the story survived, the further it moved from whatever originally inspired it. So did the Anunnaki leave? Did they withdraw once humanity became self-sustaining? Did they return to Nibiru? Did some remain? Or were they never visitors at all? Were they simply the gods ancient people created to explain a dangerous and unpredictable world? The texts do not give us a clear answer. They leave us with absence. And absence is where theory grows. The Anunnaki theory is powerful because it begins with genuine ancient material. The Anunnaki really do appear in Mesopotamian religious literature. They are described as a group of important gods, although their number, identity, and function change across periods and texts. They are not consistently presented as one fixed group carrying out one single mission. In some traditions, they determine fate. In others, they participate in divine assemblies. In later literature, some are connected with the underworld. Ancient texts really do describe gods performing exhausting labor before humans existed. They describe a rebellion among divine workers. They describe humanity being created to take over that work. They describe clay combined with divine flesh, blood, or intelligence. They place Enki near the center of the plan. They describe a mother goddess physically forming humans. And they preserve flood traditions in which Enki warns a chosen survivor. Those elements are not inventions of modern conspiracy culture. They belong to the ancient literary record. What the recognized translations do not plainly say is that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrials from an inhabited planet called Nibiru. They do not provide one continuous account of Nibiru's atmosphere failing. They do not explicitly state that gold was mined to repair that atmosphere. They do not describe DNA, chromosomes, laboratories, spacecraft, or genetic engineering in modern scientific language. And they do not present a single chronological history in which every element of the modern Anunnaki narrative unfolds exactly as later writers describe it. That larger story is an interpretation, a reconstruction built by reading religious mythology as encoded historical testimony. Sitchin believed the ancient stories should be taken far more literally than scholars had taken them. When a text described beings from heaven, he saw visitors from space. When it described divine essence mixed with clay, he saw biological engineering. When it described humans performing labor, he saw a created worker species. When kingship descended from heaven, he saw extraterrestrial government. And when the gods became distant, he saw the end of direct contact. Critics argue that this approach combines texts written in different languages, locations, and centuries, then treats them as one continuous technical record. They argue that words connected to gods, planets, stars, and divine realms have been removed from their religious and literary context. Supporters respond that ancient people could only describe advanced technology using the language available to them. A spacecraft might become a heavenly chariot. A laboratory might become a creation chamber. A scientist might become a god. Genetic material might become divine blood. And an engineered species might become humanity shaped from clay. If a civilization thousands of years ago encountered beings with technology far beyond its understanding, how would that civilization describe them? Would it use scientific language or religious language? Would it call them astronauts or gods? That question is one reason the theory continues to survive, but neither possibility can be settled merely by repeating the stories. The question is, what kind of evidence would be necessary to move the theory beyond interpretation? A verified artifact manufactured somewhere other than Earth. Biological evidence demonstrating non-human intervention in our genetics. A cuneiform text that clearly describes technology rather than mythology. An archaeological site matching the alleged mining or landing operations. Astronomical proof of an inhabited Nibiru, or physical evidence that advanced beings interacted with early humanity. None of that has been publicly established. And yet, the ancient stories remain. Higher beings create humanity. Humanity is created for labor. One creator repeatedly protects the species. Another seeks to limit or destroy it. A chosen survivor is warned before a devastating flood. Civilization descends from heaven. Kings rule by divine authority. And eventually, the gods become distant. To historians, these themes reveal how ancient societies understood work, political power, suffering, nature, and the relationship between human beings and the divine. To ancient alien theorists, they reveal something else, a memory, not preserved perfectly, not written scientifically, but carried forward through thousands of years of myth. If that memory began with an encounter, how much of the original story remains, and how much was transformed by time? The oldest Mesopotamian stories do not provide us with a scientific report of human origins. They do not offer a laboratory record, a spacecraft manifest, or a genetic sequence proving intervention by another species. But they preserve a story that continues to feel strangely modern. Powerful beings exist before humanity. They perform difficult labor. They rebel. A new species is created to carry the burden. That species contains something earthly and something divine. Humanity multiplies, becomes difficult to control, survives repeated attempts at reduction, and is ultimately saved from a flood because one of its creators refuses to let it disappear. To historians, these are myths, stories created to explain why humans work, why they suffer, why they die, why floods destroy civilizations, why rulers claim divine authority, and why the world appears governed by forces beyond human control. To ancient alien theorists, they may be memories, fragments of an encounter so old that technology became magic, visitors became gods, and biological engineering became creation from clay. Perhaps Enki was never an extraterrestrial scientist. Perhaps the Anunnaki never traveled from another world. Perhaps Nibiru was never their home. But if the theory is wrong, the ancient questions remain. Why did some of humanity's earliest civilizations believe people were created by higher beings? Why were humans created to serve? Why does the figure connected to our creation repeatedly become the figure who protects us? Why do flood survivors appear across different traditions under different names? And why did ancient people describe civilization, law, and kingship as gifts descending from heaven? Maybe these stories reveal more about the human imagination than human history. Maybe they are reflections of ancient societies trying to make sense of labor, authority, disaster, and survival. Or maybe mythology is what history becomes when it survives longer than anyone can remember. So, did the Anunnaki create humanity? Was Enki the architect of the human species? Was he the being later remembered as our protector? Were the gods of ancient civilization merely symbols? Or were our ancestors attempting to describe visitors they could not fully understand? And if those visitors once ruled openly on Earth, did they truly leave? Or are we still living inside the world they created? What do you believe? Share your theory in the comments. And if you enjoy investigations into ancient mysteries, extraterrestrial theories, forbidden history, and the stories hidden beneath the official narrative, like this video and subscribe to Behind the Story. There are more mysteries waiting to be uncovered. History tells us what happened. Behind the Story asks why.